Coach, thanks for joining me today on this SimpleCoach interview. Appreciate you taking the time. Grateful for it. I know you're busy. Lots of stuff going on, even though it's postseason. It never stops, seemingly.
Yeah.
But hey, thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Do appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I told you, I've watched a bunch of these to get coach's insights, so it's good to be on here.
Great. Now you will be providing those insights. So hey, you're. I always start with the basics since we've never spoken before. This is your second year as head coach, second year?
Yeah, just wrapped up the second season at St. Vincent.
Yeah. Can you just talk about your soccer journey and how you ended up at St. Vincent in, by the way, Latrobe, PA, famous beer brewing distillery in Latrobe. But anyhow, sorry.
Yeah, Latrobe. If you're from Latrobe, if you're not.
Oh, really?
Latrobe. Yeah, that's what I play my time here. So I think the locals still call it Latrobe.
Latrobe. See. Yeah. I consider my day complete. I've learned something new.
There you go.
Okay.
But
anyhow,
I've had it's been a pretty kind of unique coaching trajectory. I started out as a lot of guys do. I was a grad assistant at a really tiny, small Catholic college called Mount Aloysius, which is it's only about an hour and a half east from St. Vincent. So I grew up, Philadelphia area, played NCAA Division III soccer, knew I wanted to coach in some capacity. Wasn't sure at what level or in, what, Division I, II, III, high school, whatever it may be. So I got a grad assistant gig and said, hey, let's do it for 2 years. Midway through the second year, the head coach packed up and left. He got another coaching job. And I was, 24 years old, and they made me the head coach of both the men's and women's teams at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Hey, let's just make it even more complicated.
Yeah. Yes. I always joke with people. I think we had 2 or 3 guys on that first team that were older than me. So it was we had some international players there. Mm-hmm. So we had, probably a couple English guys or Jamaican guys that were older than me. So it was a whirlwind to get started. Kind of got just thrown into the fire, and we were able to have a good measure of success there versus what they had, prior to the coaching staff when I got there in 2012 arriving. So I stayed there thinking I was going to live there for 2 years and then probably venture back towards Philly. I ended up staying there, close to 7 years. Had a lot of fun, a lot of success on the field, great kids that we coached. And then, but I felt like I almost skipped a step, in terms of how to run a program, how to learn from someone. So, I was fortunate enough in 2019, I got hired by Aaron Sullivan to be, his first assistant coach at Vincent College and get to coach in the NESCAC. And, obviously pretty much the top league in Division III as we've seen, year in and year out. So, that was a really cool experience for 3 years up there. A lot of stuff happened. COVID happened. NESCACs weren't allowed to go recruit for like an entire year. So learned a lot about how to virtually recruit and how to try to get ins and outs of kids without meeting them in person. And, after the 2021 season up there, my wife and I, we knew we wanted to eventually get closer to family. Her family's from out this way. My family's from out in the Philly area. So we're looking at some potential head coaching positions. I knew I wanted to get back to being a head coach. And St. Vincent came open. I had coached against them 2 or 3 times when I was at Mount Aloysius. So I was familiar with the college and the campus and knew a couple of the people here. And it just, it was a good fit at that time too.
Can I ask where in Philly?
So I grew up right where Arcadia University is, the castle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, everyone knows it for the castles,
A couple weeks ago. Yeah, I toured around there.
So, grew up blocks from Arcadia. So, I always joke I ended up playing college soccer, but I had one college basketball offer to play on a basketball team, but it was at Arcadia, and I just said I'll go anywhere else in the country but 3 blocks from my parents' house.
Yeah. So, that's a real common thing, right? Like, I don't want to go far, but I don't want to be so close, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. This might be a loaded question, so you don't. If it's, I mean, were you when you got the Saint Vincent job? Were you hired for a purpose? Like, did the athletic director, is there something going on at St. Vincent? They were like, hey, we want you to come in. This is our long-term trajectory. We want you to make us Williams.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Like,
I think I think the background to it was, I mean, the St. Vincent soccer programs, both the men's and women's programs, had struggled for a long time, over a decade.
mm-hmm,
They had a coach who, similar to when I started coaching, he was coaching both the men's and women's teams,
mm-hmm,
and there just wasn't much of a measure of success. But I think the administration, of the school, when they opened up a search for a new coach, they opened up a search for a new women's coach and a new men's coach at
mm-hmm,
the same time. So I think the administration, Father Paul, who's our president, Dr. Jeff Mallory, who's our vice president, they are guys that are serious about athletic success, in all
mm-hmm,
capacities, and I think
mm-hmm,
they just wanted a more well-rounded, successful soccer setup here.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, I got hired. My first day was, I think, the last day of January of 2022. But Brian Butler, our women's soccer coach, he started, I think, 4 days before me.
Mm-hmm.
So they want there's a lot more I guess support to have athletic success here now at St. Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
Not only like upgrades to facilities, like
Yeah.
they upgraded our weight room last summer, like did a complete renovation of our weight room. They just put in stadium lights at our turf field, so now
Oh, you
that's
did.
when
Oh,
they got
okay.
put in. They got put in late summer this year.
Yeah.
So we were able
I
to have
didn't
our
see
first.
those. Yeah, it must have
Yeah,
been it must have been after when I stopped by.
yeah, and
And
they have
yeah.
plans to like make that turf setup that you
Uh-huh.
saw more of a stadium feel as opposed to
Yeah.
just a turf field. That it's a nice location right in the middle of campus for students to come out, but
Yeah.
to have stadium seating and a press box, and now we have
Yeah.
lighting at the field so we can play night
Yeah.
games. So, and then the next major capital project at the college is an indoor athletic field house.
Uh-huh.
So that'll have an indoor turf field and an indoor track,
Yeah.
and really will be a really nice facility. And that'll be like right across the street, kind of catty corner to where our outdoor turf is. So yeah, I think they have a lot more, expectations to have success here, and so I think they wanted to bring in coaches that had been at successful programs. I was at Williams. I think Brian, the women's coach, was coming off a stint at Montclair
Mm-hmm.
State on the women's side. So
Yeah.
both programs were kind of national contenders.
Yeah. What's interesting is I had this is sort of off the beaten path, but I had the president of Adrian College uh, on and talked to him, and he wrote a book about small schools, and he is at Adrian College a huge proponent of athletics as a means for the school to drive enrollment and alumni engagement and all these different things. It was really interesting, and I look at St. Vincent. No, when I go to these places, when I visited, I had no expectation. I think I must have played you guys back in the '80s, many, many moons ago.
Yeah,
And I was surprised that, oh my gosh, like the facilities that you have. Obviously, the football stadium and those grass fields because of the Steelers, right?
sure, sure.
But then the turf field that's dedicated to whatever soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, whatever you got there,
Mhm.
and sort of all of the facilities. The gym was still undergoing some work. It was, I mean, super impressive. So
Yeah,
I could totally buy into the fact that you're hired to elevate the program, right? Like,
yeah,
because
yeah.
you're getting everything. Yeah, I don't want to say you're getting everything. Every place doesn't, but you have all of those tools available to you to really make it a place where kids could be attracted. I'm like, hey, I wouldn't mind playing at St. Vincent. Look at what I get. Great school, great school of faith, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
If it aligns, you got it all. So
Yeah.
I rambled. I'm sorry.
No, no, you're fine.
Um, hey, maybe you could just talk a little bit about the president, the PAC, the President's Athletic Conference, um, and competitively where you see yourself, what are the other teams, that sort of thing. I always try to ask coaches their perspective on the conference. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think it's a super balanced league. I think before we played Waynesburg this year, Treg, the Waynesburg coach, kind of related to the CONCACAF, or I think that's what he uses. It was just anybody can really, honestly, anybody can beat anyone on any given day. And I think the results, kind of bared that out throughout the season. Particularly in the last 2 seasons, it's been, we've been obviously towards the bottom and haven't cracked through into the top 6 for the playoffs, but we've been able to, really compete, kind of go toe to toe with the teams that end up winning it, or end up in the conference championship game. So I think that's the fun part of it. There's not really a match day where going in like, hey, if we just if we roll the ball and just play today, we're going to win 5-0. It's really it's really a balanced league in that regard, and I think there's really some contrasting styles that make it a fun league to play in too, just as a coach to like game plan and prepare for. The difference of what you're going to see in Grove City versus like Westminster versus Chatham. It's interesting to see that. Whereas some leagues, like I know in NESCAC it kind of had its reputation as a league at large. Here I think a lot of teams use some contrasting styles, which make it fun. Like I said, to prepare for. So yeah, I think that's for me the thing that jumps out the most is just from 1 to 11. Like I think Teal College might have finished at the bottom in our standings, but they drew with us, and they drew with Grove City, who made it to the conference championship game, and in my eyes is they haven't won it in the last couple of years, but they've been the top team in my eyes. Grove City's been, so that just shows kind of the nature of the league, I think.
Yeah. Is it fluid year to year? Is it a type of league where Geneva finished first, while Grove City won it tournament, I think.
Yeah, this year was Geneva. Geneva got both.
They did. Okay.
Postseason, and then.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's been super. Like I think when I took the job, I looked. I think the last like 7 or 8 years, there's been 6 different conference champions.
Yeah.
W&J might have repeated. They won during the COVID year, the spring season, and they might have won the year before that. But other than that, I think Geneva's won, Westminster's won. There's been Franciscan won last year, Bethany won the year before that. So it's been a kind of a crapshoot in terms of who wins it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've been to a number of the schools in the PAC, and I mean, the little bit of soccer knowledge that I have about the individual teams, they're great schools. Like you can't go wrong in any of those places. But let me ask you, because I mean, you have this. Hey, you started very early. At Mount Aloysius, then you go and you learn a lot. Probably, I would assume you were a sponge at the NESCAC, right? Because who wouldn't want that type of experience? But at St. Vincent, how big of a deal is team culture for you, and what you do, and how important is it for you to where you want to get the program eventually?
Yeah, I think when I first got here, it was, it was really a program that only operated from August through November. And then when the season was over, they were like, all right, we'll see you again next preseason. There wasn't, I'm sure they were doing spring practices and things, but there wasn't really a lot of care for off season and, year-round program. And even in Division III now, we have, they've upped it to 24 days in the spring semester. And you just get more time together, and you got to make the best use of that time. But yeah, I think prior, there just wasn't, that soccer culture. So that was a big thing, in year 1 and 2, like that we were trying to recruit to was simply, can we just get guys that, have a mindset to be like a year-round footballer. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're just as excited, at a February, 7 a.m. or 8 p.m. lift, in the gym, as they are with day one of preseason. And they really, kind of embrace that, that year-round philosophy. So I think that's been, I think in the first year I was here, that was the big thing we were trying to push through more than anything, was just, a day in and day out soccer culture. And now I think last spring, was the next step towards that. I think the team, we had leaders, and I think the leaders, the upperclassmen on our team, finally like took hold of the program themselves a bit, which is important. Like, I think last spring, this past spring, I guess, of 23, was I started seeing the evidence that like the team was taking the program itself by the reins, as opposed to just the coaches saying something that had to be followed,
Yeah.
versus this is how we do things here. And I think this past spring was the first time we saw that. We have an amazing leader, one of our amazing leaders on our team, Eduardo Rica, who's from Brazil. He was kind of spearheaded that. Certainly some other guys, Jose Hurtado, and some other upperclassmen. Our senior group this year was great. So I think that was kind of the next step. But yeah, I mean, it's hugely important. I think when I first got here, we had one. I remember one initial sit down I had with a player where he didn't understand like why he had to invest in his teammates off the field. Like, he just thought like, I'm coming to practice, I'm working hard, I respect my teammates, and I'm, and even at a professional level, obviously that's not enough, but at a professional level, they all have, their own families, their own lives outside of their coming to the facility. But in college, it's all encompassing, right? You're with your mates like every single day. You're with them in class. You're with them. So if you're not invested, like, you can't fake that once August comes around. And I think that's where you see the difference. Like, towards the mid to late parts of the season are the teams that can really take those up and downs, and their culture is strong enough and their buy-in strong enough that they can still get results late, even if they've had some negative results. So I think that was like kind of the twofold process here, was like, can we get the guys into a year-round football and mindset, and then can we get the guys to take ownership of the things that we've been preaching?
Yeah. Where do you recruit from? Because I'm looking, and the first person that pops up as a freshman. So I'm blaming you. That's your recruit, right? Is a kid from Yorba Linda, California.
Yeah,
Right? So I'm like, wow. Where do you recruit from? What's your primary area?
Yeah. So I've always been a coach that's tried to recruit, nationally. The first college I was at, Mount Aloysius, we were able to recruit internationally, with some academic scholarships they had there. But here, and obviously at Williams was a national recruiting landscape. So I learned kind of the national scene a lot more in those 3 years. So when I got here, I knew I wanted to try to make some inroads in Pittsburgh. There's some good Pittsburgh talent. But like, I went to, I think one of my first recruiting weekends when I was at St. Vincent, I went to the Beadling Showcase down in Pittsburgh. And I think every single PAC school was there. So I was like, there's 11, and we're all close in geography. So, I was like, there's 11 of us, plus the Ohio schools, plus some of the AMCC schools I used to coach against. And, there's 20 to 25 Division III schools that are all trying to recruit Pittsburgh. So, I made the conscious decision, like, let's recruit nationally. Like, let's go to some of these national ECNL events, ECRL events, and let's pull some guys that are looking for a Division III liberal arts college soccer experience. And I think states like California, Arizona, Florida, we have a player from Utah. We have one guy from Texas. Like, some of those states like California and Texas have some good Division III colleges. Florida doesn't. Florida, it's you play D1, D2, or you play NAIA. So I think that was kind of a conscious decision. Like, let's try to pull some talent from all around the country. And I think our freshman class this fall, like, was kind of embodied that. Grant, who's the goalie you mentioned from California. We have Cam, who's a midfielder from Texas. Logan, who's a defender from Florida. Mattia, who's a forward from Connecticut. So we've really just branched outside of our immediate circle to find good players, good students.
Yeah. Bunch of Jersey kids too.
Yeah. Most of that comes from we have a relationship with St. Benedict's Prep.
Oh wow, yeah, not a bad place to have a relationship
soccer
with.
Powerhouse. So St. Vincent was the first Benedictine institution in the country.
Oh,
so St. Benedict's is one of the schools that these Benedictine priests and brothers branched out and founded St. Benedict's. So now there's it's kind of a feeder school to St. Vincent in a way. So we've been able to get some good players that have international backgrounds, from that relationship.
Yeah, that is not a bad pipeline
at
all.
No. Yeah, going out to St. Benedict's. I went last winter. Just watching training sessions there is great.
Yeah, it's
30, 35 really good high school players.
Yeah, it's a different level. Really in the high school world here, it's a totally different level. But okay, so why don't you give me, since it's your second full season that I'll say you had a full cycle for, right? You weren't just showing new and sort of thrown into the fire. But how do you think your season went?
Yeah, I mean, we were like results wise, and our goal to get into the top 6, we were certainly like disappointed by it. Because set a preseason goal, don't reach it, you're going to be disappointed. But I thought the team really embodied how we want to play, ultimately, like how we want to win here. Once we got into the brunt of conference play, like we were an incredibly hard team to break down. We were a really good defensive team. We had trouble in terms of final third and generating goals. I mean, set piece delivery and finishing was a huge issue for us. But our guys, I thought for the first time, and I think that carried off our spring season, really embodied how we want to play, how we want to win here. Just being really, really, really tough to break down defensively, being a really good pressing defensive team. And I think if we can bring in, a few players to help, it can kind of turn the tide on those results. I think our first 8 conference games were all decided by a goal. And I don't think we allowed more than one goal in those first 8 conference games. So it was funny. It was before the game, coaches would have our little pregame chat, be like, you're always like, all right, who's getting, what's going to happen today? And, our assistant coach joked, well, it'll be 0-0 in the 80th minute, and then somebody will score and that'll decide the game, as much as we prepared and everything. And that's, but that was also just we were, I told our guys even the last couple weeks of the season, I'm really proud of how you guys are playing and performing. If we keep doing this over time, the results will come. And that was the unfortunate part. I think if we scored, 2 goals in conference play and one of those 1-0 losses and flipped them to 1-0 wins, then we're in the conference playoffs and we're not disappointed with the season. So it's hard to just, take in the results. I thought we were way, way, way more competitive than St. Vincent has traditionally been.
I just look at those games, right? The ties and the 1-goal losses. And I'm like, if you could flip those, and I counted 7.
Yeah.
So there are 7 1-goal games, and a number of those are in conference.
Yeah.
That's a remarkably different, you'd be in a much different standing.
Yeah.
Than where you ended
up. And Allegheny, they scored against us in the 88th minute. I'm trying to think of something Waynesburg was with 20 minutes left. Geneva was a late second half goal. Franciscan was a second half goal. So, it was games that were hanging in the balance, and they found the finish before we did. Similar, we played Bethany, we beat them 1-0. It was we scored a late goal.
Yeah.
Westminster, we were down 1-0 late, and we scored 2 late goals. So it was just really, really competitive team that, but we got to find ways to score earlier in games.
It's you need to have that. I would say you need to be a 1-goal team. Right, 1 goal a game team, so that you're going to get a goal. That's your average.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have games where you outperform that, and that puts you at an advantage, right?
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of teams, I try to break it down to the most fundamental. Like, I want a goal
Sure.
a game, right?
Yeah. Well, on the flip side, you want a goals against that's less than
Goals
one.
against, right? Yeah. That's
So,
the whole,
you know,
yeah.
and that was like we played Fredonia, SUNY Fredonia, in our non-conference slate, and they scored 5 goals in the first half against us. So that was like our almost a turning point in a way, because after that it was like our guys were, you know, way more determined, kind of fed up in a way, and it's like, you know, we're not going to be this type of team. So they really took that to heart, and I think after that game, you know, I think we gave up maybe one goal, you know, in almost every game or less, or shut out until the final couple of matches. So
yeah, that's true. I just noticed that. Like, I mean, you weren't close in Bridgewater, Mount Aloysius, and then Fredonia, and then all of a sudden you sort of, I mean, you become, it's like respectable soccer, right? Like, that close.
Yeah.
That's where the majority of those games are, those 7 games where it's like, well, if you just flip those to being on your side.
That's the tough part, right? It's a tough part.
Yeah. I have this easy button here that I just hit every time. Like, be a one goal a game team. You know,
funny.
it's easy. Come on.
Coaches are just trying to will the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah.
You know, I think it might have been Chatham our last game. We hit the crossbar once and the post twice, and it was just like,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
He's like, what are you gonna do? You know, what are you gonna do?
So you have those games, right, where it's like it doesn't matter. There's saran wrap or something on the goal that it's just not going in, right? So you have any highlights in your mind, like when you think back, like, oh, what was, was there a particular game where you're like, man, this is it. This is where I think we need to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Westminster match for us, like, it was a home conference opener, so it was first conference game. They scored like a crazy goal midway through the first half, long shot from distance, and it just, you know, as the game was progressing, it just felt like, okay, like, you know, it's 1-0, and then I think they made, you know, they kind of made a strategic, like, okay, let's, you know, from trying to get the second goal, they had a couple opportunities early in the second half to get the second goal, and they didn't get it. So I think they made like the conscious decision, like, okay, let's try to see this game out now. And I think a lot of St. Vincent teams in the past would have lost that game 1-0 because there was just frustration building. You know, you could sense it. But our guys just kept being hungry around goal, and we scored 2 goals in the last, I don't even know, 6-7 minutes of the game, from my memory. And it was like, you know, the game was over, and it was like kind of shock on both sides. Like, you know, it's always that where you get that the late game winner is always like, you know, because they went from, okay, we're going to win this game 1-0 to in the span of minutes, oh, now we're losing 2-1 and there's a minute left. So I think that gave me a lot of, I think that gave the team and our coaches a lot of confidence that we could compete. You know, Westminster's always been a good team. And I mean, obviously another big conference win was Bethany. It's really hard to win. You know, anybody in our conference will tell you it's really hard to win down at Bethany. It's a tough drive down there. So to win that game 1-0 was big for the guys. It kept us in the conference playoff hunt. So I think those 2 games were, were highlights for sure for us for the season.
I got to ask you, now that you brought them up, Bethany, do they play on the turf field or do they play on the grass field like you go down the hill?
Yeah. I mean, I've played them on both, so I don't know. I don't know how they do it or how they decide that. We played them on the turf this year. They just got a new turf surface, which was nice. At their football complex. I played down on the grass field before. Which, again, you have all these tie-ins, right? Like when I was at Williams, like Williams won, I think, the 94 national championship, and Bethany might have won the 93 or 92.
Yeah. They were good for a few years when I played them there, and it was, I mean, they had some real ballers.
Yeah.
You know,
so it was always fun playing on their, you know, when I first started coaching, we played at Bethany a few times, and we usually played on their grass, and it was always fun, right? You just, it's kind of a nice little bowl there, and
Yeah.
old school grass facility. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we played them on the turf this year.
Yeah. Neat little school. Like you drive and it's West Virginia, and
Yeah,
all of a
yeah,
sudden you're like, hey, here's Bethany, and
yeah.
it's
It just pops up.
rolling hills everywhere. It's got to be everyone's calves there must be monstrous, from
Yeah, yeah.
walking up hills and yeah,
Well, they have so many good international players on the team
yeah,
too.
yeah.
So
Do they
that's
still? Do they?
yeah,
They
yeah.
still?
So
Yeah.
Frankie, the coach there, I believe he played there, and
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of brought that back. They have a
Mm-hmm.
really good. I know like some really good players from Argentina, the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So, like I said, with the contrasting styles of the pack,
Yeah.
that's a completely different game than if you're going to play Geneva, for instance.
Yeah. They used to have like Irish guys
Yeah,
back in the 90s when they won the national championship. They were loaded with. They had to have a coach who would fly in for preseason, like manage preseason, and then leave, and then he'd come back for the postseason. Like
that's great.
that's how. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. It was a little intimidating. They'd march down. The students would march down, banging a drum down that hill,
Okay.
and then go around, dance around the soccer ball, and it's like you don't see that thing. You're like,
No,
what
no.
is going on?
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I don't think that's allowed anymore. But so, um, was there anything that you thought was maybe particularly challenging, or something things that you had to deal with unexpected that you thought were like this is not normal? Like I shouldn't have to be dealing with this. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, you can like injuries are always like the convenient
Mm-hmm.
excuse. I mean, I think most coaches always know like, hey, we're probably gonna have one or two like serious injuries are gonna pop up at some point, whether they're season
Mm-hmm.
ending or weeks lasting. And I mean, we had from the start to finish of the season, we had probably four guys that were starters or would be starters for us that
Mm-hmm.
two ACLs, an MCL, and a fractured ankle. So it was, and a couple of those were early, third and fourth game of the season to two guys that were going to start. So that was particularly difficult. Probably our best 1v1 player in terms of like goal scoring and goal creation. He went down at that Westminster game I was just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
He created the second goal for us, the game winner, off the dribble, and then like 2 minutes later, as we're defending to see the game out, he injured his leg and was done for the season. So, and then one of our freshman midfielders from Pittsburgh, he got injured. Third game of the season, fourth against Penn State Altoona, and he was playing really well. So those were like tough because our weaknesses towards the end of the season, right, in conference play where we had a really
Mm-hmm.
tough time with goal scoring and goal creation. I think those were two players that would have helped us out immensely in some of those 0-0 games. Can we find something?
Yeah.
They were creators to find something. So
Yeah.
I think that for us was really the only challenge was trying to configure the lineup once different guys went down, and how do we put our best 11 on the field, and who can give us some can keep our defensive identity when they go in, but they can give us some some punch in the final third. So yeah, that was the most injuries I've dealt with on a serious nature, and and I think this was my 12th year coaching in college. So this was the first, this was probably the most I've had to deal with in terms of long injuries. Whereas like we actually didn't really have as a team, we didn't have too much of like groin pulls or strains, and we do a lot of recovery and yoga and stuff like that to prevent that. But the serious stuff we just couldn't get past.
Yeah. All right, I got to ask you, because you had two ties, and this is a old topic, but do you like no overtimes, or would you prefer to battle it out?
I'd prefer to battle it out. I can see the reasoning. Like I came from the NESCAC, so I can see the reasoning with some of the conferences where it's like where you're looking at maybe NESCAC who's playing Saturday and Sunday, UAA who sometimes UAA is playing Friday, Sunday, and they're on a flight, the days in between.
Yeah.
So across the country, it's just different. Each conference is different in the landscape. I mean, we play Wednesday, Saturday, or Tuesday, Saturday, so it's not. I don't think it's as much of an issue for us. So I think, I mean, whether the regular season component changes, like I'm a huge proponent of golden goal. Like I just think that should be, that should be the case, particularly in the postseason. I
Mm-hmm.
think like all my memories as a player,
Oh
or some
yeah.
of my memories as a coach, and I'm sure a lot of coaches would talk about that, is the golden goal moment when your team scores in the first or
Yeah.
second overtime. So
Yeah.
yeah, that, I mean, I don't think it's like it doesn't keep me up at night like thinking about it, but
I
we had,
hope not. Like, oh,
yeah,
come on.
we had so many close games this year. And I think the year before we had maybe 4 or 5 draws. So um, yeah, it's it's almost like ask me on the day, right? Because like
Yeah.
we tied W and J this year, and I was like, the game ended. We were down a few starters with injuries, and I was like, okay, I'm happy to get out
I'm
of here.
packing it in. Let's go, boys, on the
I'm,
bus.
I'm happy to get out of here with a draw. But then like we played Teal a couple weeks later, and we
Yeah.
were second half. We were just battering the goal, and it's like I wish we could add an overtime. So, but
Yeah.
you know what the parameters are going in for it. It makes you adjust as a coach a little bit earlier in the second half, to like, okay, we have momentum in this game. We really gotta push for the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Or we don't have momentum, so let's try to get the draw. So um, yeah, I mean, I'm a proponent of let's play in overtime. Let's always try
Mm-hmm.
to get a winner out of it. But
Yeah.
more of my take is like, can we get postseason play to that back to that
Yeah.
golden goal?
Yeah. 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 That would be fun, I
Yeah,
think.
because even
Yeah.
like NCAA tournament, like those teams are always playing back to back until the Final Four, and now you're
Yeah.
saying no golden goals, so now they got to play
Yeah.
20 minutes no matter what. And I
Yeah.
think so. If you're trying to,
That's a
for
very
health,
good point.
yeah, if it's
That's
for
a
health
really
and
good
player
point.
safety, like NCAA tournament time, like at least make that golden goal. So, if someone's playing a late Saturday game, they can, they don't have to drag it on for 12 more minutes to before they play on
Mm.
Sunday. So,
Yeah. I mean, Amherst went to OT in the semifinals, and
yeah,
so yeah, so they're playing that stayed OT. They went to PKs. So,
yeah,
but yeah, you could see why then all of a sudden I think it changes, right? Like I think a coach just natural, right? You're the parameters of the game change, so you adapt to those parameters. So I
yeah,
think I
yeah,
think the lack of overtime changes the way you coach, even in subtle ways.
yeah,
I think right, like, and I think once you go into OT, knowing that you have to do the whole 20 minutes changes your perception and what you're doing and who you're putting in, who you're, oh my God, can I keep that guy out there? His legs got to be like, you know, two by
yeah,
fours by now, and it just so
yeah. And I mean, I think if you're a team that's going to win in the tournament, like the national tournament, you have to have an inherently deep team. I don't think there's
yeah,
many that are playing
no,
14 guys and getting through
yeah,
that. So, if the regular season, you're saying overtimes, well, it's going to tax my guys. Well, I think one of the staples of Division III should be deep benches. And
yeah,
like if you look at the national champions of years past, Tufts
yeah,
during their heyday, they had their next 7 or 8 guys off the bench were arguably just as good as the guys in the starting 11. Messiah was
yeah,
always that
yeah,
way.
well, yeah. Very
So
true.
it should, as a positive, right? If you bring back overtimes in the regular season, it should force coaches to play more
Yeah,
guys, right?
yeah. No. That's a great point you raised because I I I watch a lot more games than probably I should. I'll just say
Me
like
too. Me too.
some really good games and some not so good games, but one of the common themes of that you watch. So mentioned the Nescacs. The key to the Nescac success, I think, is that when they start making the subs and bringing guys on, there's not a drop off. Whereas you look at teams that aren't sort of that stature, of that level, the first thing that you notice is that I'll even say a temporary drop off, right? Where these guys are coming in and they're trying to figure out what's going on, but you do see it, you do see a drop off,
Yeah.
or you see teams that just don't make the subs because they know that that's going to happen, um, and those teams will never get to the I think, to anywhere close to a national championship, just because they don't have the legs to get them there.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
you
I mean,
know.
that's what we've been trying. I mean, that's ultimately what we want to do here. Like, we want to
Mhm.
play, 17, 18 guys in a
Yeah,
match. Like, we
yeah,
want to keep guys fresh throughout a season.
yeah,
Um, and I think you see sustained success when you're able to do that.
yeah,
There's better
yeah,
buy-in.
yeah.
Like Grove City in our conference is a good example. They always play a very deep bench, and
Hmm.
they still have success throughout the season. So
Yeah,
that's what we're trying to do here too.
yeah, yeah. That's it. That's the other part of it, right? Like the whole culture aspect and
Yeah.
getting buy-in from your team. Like if you're just playing 11 guys of a 30-man roster, you're going to have trouble at some
Yes.
point. Like
Yes.
I think that's just human nature, right? Somebody's going to rebel. People are going to be unhappy. That sort of. But if you
Yeah.
play 18, 2/3 of your roster, that's a big, big, big difference in
Yeah.
terms of team chemistry, right? I think that's a
Mm,
huge difference. But
for sure.
yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting conversation. But um, I, I was going to ask. Oh, this is another rules thing. So
Yeah.
all right, so you're getting more training sessions during the spring, which is good. I'd assume that you would also like to have more games. I mean,
Always. Always.
is that fair? Like
Yeah.
training to train is fun, I guess, but it's for the game, right? You do it for the games. Um, Let me ask you: do you have any thoughts on like would you be a proponent of sort of figuring out a way to 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 make the regular season longer, play the same amount of games and not be impacted, but just have 10 extra days in that calendar? Would you?
Yeah, I think whether it's at the beginning or at the end, I mean, I think every coach would agree with that.
Mhm.
I think there's with the fall sports in particular, it's just such a sudden thing. Like, our guys get here, we might have 8 or 9 days together. That basically a week of preseason, give or take a couple days,
And then
and
you're.
then classes are started. Right, classes
Yep.
are started. You have freshmen that are, in it for the first time, and you're still trying to put in some of your structures to your team, right, in that
Mhm.
first week or 2 weeks of the actual season. So I think the other thing is just to get the best performances. Like, if you start the games a few days earlier, even, and just do the best job you can in terms of eliminating, um, you know, the 24-hour turnaround to play a game, those types of things. Um, you'll just get better quality play. You'll get less
Mhm.
injuries. Like, we saw that with our team. Serious injuries could be a result of just you're tired, you're overused, and
Yep.
um, you're more inclined to get injured, more likely to get injured. So yeah, I think for the whole build, right? I mean, like, referencing all the way back to the talk you had with the Adrian College
Mhm.
president, right? I mean, I think athletics is such an institutional driver now that, like, I mean, our guys are coming here to study in our business school or study
Mhm.
STEM or study
Mhm.
computer science, some of our top programs. That's certainly a reason why they chose it. But the two classes of recruits that I had played a part in,
Mhm.
a large part of their decision obviously is to be able to play college soccer and
College
play
soccer,
with
absolutely.
the team they met here, on their
Yeah.
visit, and the
Mhm.
coaches they met here on their visit. So I think the more you give them in that, I don't think there's any appetite on our team, right, for less is more,
Less.
right? I think they
Yeah.
want more, right? They're like
Yeah. Yeah.
they're asking me, like, why are we only playing one
Yeah.
spring date?
Yeah.
Why aren't we playing more games?
Yeah.
Um, why aren't we practicing? Like, Division 1 teams are, they get back in January and they start practicing, right? So it's,
Yeah.
I think we're ready for that, but there's certainly constraints,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Division 3 budgets, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
I
that's probably the key driver there.
I talked to Katie Boldvich of the Landmark Conference, the president of the Landmark Conference, and then Sarah Odie of the Ohio Athletic Conference, and it's definitely a subject of discussion, right? Is how do you do that, right? Like well, football has the acclimatization week or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like I haven't had enough coffee today to
Yeah.
say a word like that.
Acclimatization. Say that 10 times. 10
10
times.
times fast, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And how do you normalize that across athletics, right? Because I mean, look, and this isn't a case of it's not a comparative thing, good or making a judgment good or bad, but it is unequal how different programs, and it's not just soccer, have a completely different schedule, right? Like, and then in comparison to somebody else. So, in the fall, football's there 10 days earlier,
Yep.
and soccer shows up, and they have 20 days to get ready. Actually, longer, because their first games are not until usually that first weekend in September.
Yeah.
Whereas soccer doesn't have that luxury because you have to play so many games, and so you're starting a little bit earlier. And I think that's definitely something that, and I don't think it's super expensive. I mean, it's, again, let me hit that easy button, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm spending other people's money, but I got to believe bringing in a program a week earlier isn't, the overhead on that can't be so dramatic where it's going to break a bank, right? Like,
Yeah.
I
I
don't know.
mean, our football's here, right? The trainers are
Yeah.
already here.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's essentially feeding the guys for,
Yeah.
uh, an extra week. So
An extra week. And
yeah.
yeah, so anyhow, I have, my thoughts on that. I said add a week at the beginning. So if you're reporting the 17th, now you report the 10th, right? Like,
Yeah.
so that 1 week, and then the national championship is a week later. And so
Yeah.
all you've done is you just sort of taken your season and you stretched it. And you do that enough, you're going to end up with 3 or 4 weeks where you're just playing one game, like
Yeah.
on a weekend, if you wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, we had a week this season where we played Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday.
Yeah.
Because like the guys want to play games, right? If
Yeah.
you only play 15 games, it's different than if you play 18 or 19.
Yeah.
They want to play games, and when you have a bigger, if you have 30, 35 guys,
Yeah.
you want to schedule like 10 non-conference games, because
Yeah.
those are games where you can get more guys in and play a
Yeah.
deeper bench and try things out. So
Yeah. All right, couple more questions, and I'll let you get on with your day, and you can prepare for your conference meeting with
yeah,
the
yeah.
coaches. Woohoo! What are your plans for this spring? Like, do you have any set of objectives, or are you just starting to figure that out after just finishing your season?
Yeah, I mean,
A few weeks ago?
like a couple of the objectives stay the same, right? I mean, we want to get the guys, particularly in this time frame in the winter months, we want to get them, into a regular weightlifting routine, into a regular, strength conditioning routine, particularly for freshmen. Like, they tend to have like a lot of room to grow in those areas, like to
Mm-hmm.
get bigger, faster, stronger, so to speak. Um, and then this, so that's something that always stays the same. And
Yeah.
I think from a like playing standpoint, we're always experimenting a little bit more in the spring than we would in a
Mm-hmm.
fall season. Like, so we'll experiment with some, maybe player X at center back where he's been a center mid, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for us, but for us in particular this spring, I think, with where we talked about earlier this morning, like in some of our weaknesses lie, I think we really want to hone, our attacking structure and attacking movements, and become a
Yeah.
bit more like refined and
Yeah.
clinical, with a lot of that stuff. So I think that's going to be a focus for us, with getting more sessions. I think, to give our guys like active gameplay. I think we've talked a lot about like, can we do like session and then inter squad of sorts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that, we're not playing different opponents, but we'll mix up. We're fortunate enough, we have, I think 29 healthy guys right now of the returners.
Mm-hmm.
We should have 30. We have 31 eligible to return, plus 2 guys that might take a final grad year for the COVID year next
Mm-hmm.
fall. So we're fortunate enough we can play inter squad. So I think that's going to be a focus in terms of like development, is session maybe working on very similar things, and then inter squad, can we try to implement that on both sides, and then continue that until we get to our spring play day and alumni game, and that's towards the end of April. So I think those are the focuses for us. Is we have a younger team, a younger roster, and so can we get stronger for the college game, quicker for the college game, some of those athletic traits.
You do. I mean, when you said young, I was like, yeah, you do have a lot of freshmen, freshmen.
Yeah, I think we had 35 guys rostered, somewhere around that number, and I think 27, again, roundabout estimates, were freshmen or sophomores. So we had three juniors and 5 seniors. So we have a lot of potential for growth, because I think in coaching, I think the biggest jumps you usually see are from that freshman to the sophomore year for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. And then they hit their stride the junior year. That's what I always find. It's like that's the peak for, I don't know if that's right, but in my view, it's like the juniors tend to outperform the seniors, I think.
Yeah, then because seniors start thinking about job market, internships, what's next, and juniors, as guys
still hungry,
procrastinate things until the last minute, which would be senior year.
Yeah. Well, I will say, if you decide to have inter-squad scrimmages, for a free T-shirt, I will gladly offer myself up as a referee.
Oh, okay.
I will come out there and be your referee.
Well, our assistant coaches would gladly give you a T-shirt to.
Yeah,
or even
I'm game. I'll get out there. Yeah, seriously, I mean, I'm not saying, but I love doing scrimmages.
Yeah,
love more so than regular games, and I think it's I don't know why. I think it's because I think of it as a coach, I'm looking at it a little differently.
Yeah. I like to be the referee sometimes, right in the middle of our guys,
right in the middle of the pack.
Get a different view on it.
Yeah, and then you start to ask yourself stuff like, why did you go there instead of there? Which is all you had to do is look, and you were wide.
Yeah.
I can geek out on that too. So, all right, let me ask you the last question of the day, and maybe again still too early. And do you have any goals already set for the fall?
Yeah, I mean, I think our goals will, in terms of the on-field results, will stay similar. We want to get into postseason play. I think, I think St. Vincent's been a full-fledged NCAA Division III member for maybe 14, 15 years. And the men's soccer program has never made the conference playoffs.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So this year, and I think, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago was the closest they've been. Because we were obviously in a scenario this year where the last couple games of the season, right? If we can win 2 in a row, 3 in a row, we're still in. So so I think that's the first goal, just because that will show some better signs of breakthrough. But as we keep alluding to, I think we want to have a better two-sided system, right? We still want to keep that same defensive mentality and energy and pressing schemes and things that really frustrated our opponents. But we want to, develop some of our own guys to be those goal scorers, goal creators, certainly bring in a few new fresh faces to give us a lift there. So I think in terms of, the non-specific, in terms of result oriented, I think we want to just feel better about, ourselves as a team on both sides of the ball. And I think inherently when you do that, the guys will have more belief and better results will come. So I think those, certainly, I mean, everybody, I think I phrased it in preseason this year, all 11 schools in the pack are meeting, and all 11 are saying our first goal is to make the conference playoffs. Right? Even the team that went 10, Grove City went 10-0 the year before. Franciscan won the conference the year before. They're still saying the first goal on their sheet is pack playoffs. So it's you have 11 teams all saying the same thing. So what are you doing to differentiate yourselves from the other 11 that all say the same thing, right? So I think that's where a lot of those like we mentioned before, the culture drivers, what is our guys' mentality going to be in January, February, and March? Because that's when it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. And I would say, right, I'm a huge, the spring to me is, again, another differentiator between
Yeah.
those elite programs and everyone else, right? Is they take such advantage of the spring, not only the training sessions, but all the activities. Are they
Yeah.
doing weights? Are they training? Are they doing speed and agility? All those things. Your successful fall starts in that spring, and I think that's a big component of it, and
Yeah.
how bought in. Yeah.
We have an Ironman competition here during our spring
Oh,
season.
nice.
So
I
we
won't
take
participate in that.
we take in. I will not either. We pick 10 different categories that are a mix of fitness, speed and agility, weightlifting.
Yeah.
We do a little 4v4 round robin tournament, and guys accumulate points for 26 guys participate in
Yeah.
the 40-yard dash, and you come in first, you get 26 points.
Yeah.
So we add them all up, and we have an Ironman winner. So I stole that from Aaron Sullivan at Williams. I thought
That's pretty cool. That's
those
great.
Williams teams used to do it in preseason, before the season started, which I would never, would never even get any type of acceptance by athletic trainers to do that now. But you spread it out, you do. So yeah, I stole that from him. You're always stealing tidbits from different coaches.
Yeah. That's great. I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's probably, I gotta believe, if they're like, it's probably as hyper competitive as anything too. Like, guys just.
Yeah, we had one of our captains, Eduardo, won it last year. But one of our seniors, Ben, who's like, he's a gym fanatic. He's in there all the time. Like, that was his whole goal in the spring. Like, I got to win this Ironman. I got to win this Ironman. And he came in second. And he was bummed. He was bummed.
Yeah. It's like agony of defeat, you know. Like so. Hey, Coach, this is really good. Seriously, this was really great getting a chance to meet with you, talk, and do appreciate your insights into St. Vincent. I wish you all the success, and we'll definitely have to do this again, maybe in the preseason. Jeez, I'm already like preseason.
Well, let's get there. Let's get there.
Yeah. And just to keep tabs and see how things are going. But
I appreciate you having me on, Paul. And I know I mentioned it before. Like I'm sure all the coaches tell you how much we appreciate avenues to get Division III soccer out on the forefront, such as yours. And but I think even the bigger thing for me is like being able to hear from other coaches, other like really well established, successful coaches about like some of the same questions you asked me, and getting their insights into how they run their teams. Like you're always like always learning something, whether it's Latrobe or Latrobe or what a coach is doing, what a coach is doing in their spring season. So I think it's been great for the Division III community.
I will say, and I put you in this group, like one of the things that I've learned over all of these interviews is the depth and breadth of the quality of coaches in Division III that I don't think people talk enough about. And I think it's because, 30 years ago, the assumption was Division III, you'll have a gym guy who just got the job, and so he doesn't know anything about soccer, or he's like the assistant basketball coach. And that is not, like, there are some real deal coaches, and like I said, I include you in there, and just sort of your philosophy of the game and your thinking of it, and your
I appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Coach Matt. Appreciate it, and we'll definitely be in touch.
All right, thanks again, Paul.
Thanks.